Put in
So I'm going to call the meeting to order here for the Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting for November 28th. If we could have the roll call, please.
Hi, good afternoon. So I will be calling out the names that I see in the room, and then I will move over to Zoom. So we'll start to my left with Marja Tar, citizen representative from the city of Petaluma, Joe Morgan, representative from the county of Sonoma, Alexander Oseguera from the city of Santa Rosa, Elizabeth Ridlington, sorry about that, citizen representative from the city of Santa Rosa. We have Jason Sampietro from City of Warner Park. We have Michael Harrington from the city of Healdsburg. We have Chair Ken Eichstadt from the city of Petaluma, Dana Teray from SCTA, RCPA, JP Harries from the city of Cotati, Nichols with SCTA, RCPA, and Adam Garcia from SCTA, RCPA. And then online, I see from SCTA, RCPA, David Raperda and Ross Clendenin. And then Zoe Unruh from SMART, John Jay from the city of Sebastopol, Derek Montan, forgive me for that, for mispronouncing your last name, from the city of Cloverdale, Orlando Ramirez from Caltrans District 4, Emily Sharp from the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, Owen Christopherson from SMART, Tarina Wilson from the city of Santa Rosa, and Christina Panza from the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, and then Dan Bell, citizen. Have I missed anyone?
Good job, Drew. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We have 8 members in the room, so we do have a quorum.
That's excellent. Thank you. So we do have.
Good. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Are there any public comments that are not on the regular agenda? In the room, virtually? Okay. With that, move to item 4, approval of meeting minutes from September 26th. So if I could,
I have an amendment.
yes, please.
Which I was at the last meeting, but I wasn't listed on the list of attendees as well.
So I thought you were next to Michelle, and I didn't see it, reach out to you and I forgot. So thank you
Okay.
for that. My apologies.
Okay. With that edit, is there anybody to move approval of these meeting minutes?
Everything else was good, so I'll move to approve.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And do I hear a second for this?
Second.
Okay. I think you got it there, Alexander. So you're not okay. Thank you. With that, we'd like to go into the planning element. So this is with regard to the countywide active transportation plan, the information item for review, revised draft vision and goals. So
I'll take that, and I actually realized that the draft revised vision and goals was from last time, and this was just actually intended to be a general status update. On the vision and goals, we have received some comments at various committees that we've been taking this item to, but we have not actually made revisions since our last CBPAC meeting. So at our next meeting, we'll bring that back and we'll have another discussion item on that. But I just want to give a general update on where we are with the plan and the progress. So we wrapped up the first series of milestone updates to each jurisdiction that is getting a local update through the plan through this process, as well as the round 2 milestone 2 update with the city of Cotati, who's a little bit further along in the process. And then we had technical working group meetings with at the staff level with each jurisdiction to talk about the technical analysis and initial project concepts. So the consulting team is taking that, as well as the comments that have come through the public survey. And working on developing project lists, which they should have administrative drafts of next month to circulate and be reviewed by all the jurisdiction. And an update. Let's see what else. We have the public survey is out within this week, and we've received a little over 1,000 comments so far. So really good feedback. And we've also wrapped up a series of pop-up events throughout the county and the jurisdictions receiving updates to collect feedback. There'll be another round of community engagement in the spring with those draft projects lists and maps are ready to share out with the public and get feedback on. And let's see. I think that about sums up where we are and what we've been doing. So
Are you expecting big changes to the vision and goals?
I'm not expecting big changes. You know, we've received some feedback that some of the wording in there might be a little too soft and to like strengthen it. You know, I think that we can be bold with our vision and goals and can consider that, but I don't see major changes.
Okay. Just because right now.
Yeah. And you know, it is something that like I think that we should wrap up soon, and I know that Tony's a little ahead of schedule. The countywide and local vision and goals do not have to match exactly. That's not a requirement, but yeah, we'll probably be making some tweaks to it.
Good. So with that, thank you very much, Dana. Is there any comments in the room here before we go virtually? Okay, and then any comments by the virtual members? Don't think there's any hands up. I do. How long, Dana, is the public survey going to be running to?
So this one will just be out through the end of this week. It went out in around mid-October.
Okay. And then when is the next sort of public input sort of phase of the work?
Yeah, so that's scheduled in the spring. And it may be kind of extended, like roughly March through. It could go through May, maybe June, kind of depending on.
Okay.
You know, we'll be looking for opportunities to join in public events, and so that may kind of help determine our schedule for that. But
Okay.
and that will be on the draft project, so we'll be really looking for feedback on those draft projects.
Okay, great. If there's nothing else, we'll move on. Item 5.2, Micromobility America Conference 2003 presentation. So I think this is what happened in down in Richmond, I believe. I heard really good things. So who is?
Right. Thank you. That's going to be me, Ken.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so this was at the end of, excuse me, conference, as Ken said, Micromobility America 2023. To some extent, it's an international conference, so it's nice to have it so local. And really trying to be able to evaluate, assess where we're at right now with micromobility, both in terms of technology, but then also a lot of the policy and planning that needs to come to fruition for this. So this presentation was put together by a few of the participants that went and attended the conference. John Shribs, myself, and Pete Gang of Petaluma. So these are mostly notes, just some ideas for us to kind of wrestle with, and especially given where we're all at with ATP, it's very relevant. So please feel free to stop me at any point, but was just going to go over some of the highlights, looking at technology and innovations, some of the infrastructure, and then planning. There's a lot of data and information here, so I'm going to try to go as quickly as possible, and this will be available for sharing after as well too. So conference highlights. The big takeaways, micromobility is coming. We're seeing it everywhere in terms of a variety of different wheeled rolling options for people to move around the city. And as we think about safe and complete streets, we really have to make sure that we're thinking of these new, faster, more electric mobility devices. And just to put this in context, I think it was 57% of countywide emissions comes from transportation. So this thinking about how we can move to micromobility, especially if clean energy, renewable energy is powering a lot of those electrical vehicles and devices, then that could be our most cost-effective way to reduce carbon emissions. So in terms of technology and innovations in micromobility, there are a whole lot of different ways to move around, and you can electrify everything. So this is a long list of just different ones to consider. We're going to go through a few of these examples with some visuals just to see where the technology is at. So in terms of e-bikes, there's motorcycles, street legal ones, probably ones that can go on the highway as well. Tricycles, I think those are my personal favorite, both kind of the two wheels in the back or two wheels in the front. This is a great way for just hauling goods around locally. I think one of the statistics we also like to think about is just how there's about 20% of our trips, I think, are about under 2 miles, and about 60% or so are within 6 miles. So just thinking how we can shift those trips to more efficient and more compact ways, I think is really important. If we have weather, it gets cold sometimes. So thinking about how you can protect yourself from the elements, these are some ideas as well. Just smaller vehicles, ones on the left here might be narrow enough to go on bike paths potentially. Other ones are more street legal, still small, but in that kind of golf cart category as we think of them. Scooters and skateboards, variety of different 2- and 4-wheeled ways to go around. Single-wheel devices and something called mobility scooters, just designed to figure out how we can make older adults in particular feel safer traveling around with more protection, room for storage. This is a really interesting field as well. Just thinking about how we can innovate our delivery systems using bicycles, electric powered or small delivery vehicles as well. There's some really interesting innovations thinking about adding solar panels onto these delivery cargo bicycles to try to extend the range. And as you can see, USPS and UPS are both thinking about how to bring this technology to bear. Still maybe on the fringes of micromobility, but thinking about multimodal delivery and autonomous vehicles. There are a number of different ways, kind of depending on the weight and distance that you're trying to deliver goods. These are several innovations that are coming around. Just one thing to note, around urban consolidation center. That was something I had to look up. Was just this idea of thinking, for a city, an area, how can you try to centralize the kind of shipping and delivery that goes on within an area? Can you look for efficiencies so they're not maybe 5, 6 different delivery operators, but maybe they're working together in a way to figure out how to, go neighborhood by neighborhood, not just, 5 Amazon trucks all in a row on the same street. So thinking about the infrastructure to handle all this, so saying some of these vehicles are a little wider, some are faster, so thinking how can we be able to still accommodate the traditional slower bicyclists, pedestrians in the mix with these new micromobility devices. So one way to think about is thinking of our microtransit systems, moving people around using 2, 3, 4-wheeled vehicles on scooters, having charge stations for rideshare vehicles, and even thinking how our traditional rideshare services can transition potentially to electric tricycle rickshaws or something of that sort. Not all streets are going to be able to accommodate this. This is obviously kind of an ideal cross section, but thinking about how we can build a network that can provide right of way for vehicles, for pedestrians, for bicyclists, micromobility devices, and then have other important aspects that make a complete street or greenway in terms of bioretention, stormwater management, native trees, permeable pavement. So building this network of greenways is vitally important in trying to think about connecting the city. And we'll look at a quick example from Petaluma in the next slide. But the second part, I think that is also relevant was just, being able to reduce the speeds on city roads and just make that type of movement more accessible. If you have a mix of slower moving, more vulnerable e-vehicles with, heavier cars, reducing those speeds is really important. So thinking about the non-automobile mobility infrastructure, here were just a few highlights that people were thinking about how safety is a major concern, building that complete network of greenways, having wider pathways and bikeways, and being able to have secure on-street parking are all kind of fundamental aspects of transitioning over to a more efficient type of transportation system focused on micromobility. So this is an example from Petaluma. The AIA, American Institute of Architects, did an analysis of Petaluma, thinking about where the major traffic corridors are and how you could consider transitioning those to greenways and what that might look like, just as an example. So building that network out. Here's the next point of just wider bikeways. There's a variety of recommendations, but considering, this in this picture of 2 passing delivery tricycles, what would that take to be able to have that safe movement? What width is necessary? I think is something to look forward in. Here's a working paper from the Urban Bikeway, or from NACTO, on the Urban Bikeway Design Guide. So there's some great information in there on this point. Bike scooter parking, there's a lot of great ideas, innovations coming around of how to be able to have bike share parking that both is, in this case, this one down here, I think is from Segway, where it acts, there's a lock and a charge kind of serving the same function. And so it's just a single, cord to be able to lock up your e-bike or e-scooter. In terms of rideshare system, as we know here in Sonoma County, can be very challenging. We're greatly looking forward to this next year as we start to launch our own rideshare program here in the county, but there are definitely areas for improvement. Thinking about a variety of different issues there listed: financing and operations, maintenance, insurance, technology, partnerships. They really have to be dialed in for a successful program. And the other, I think, important point is really figuring out where are those neighborhoods that might benefit the most from being able to utilize this low-cost means of getting around, particularly in disadvantaged communities, finding out ways to accelerate their use of micromobility as a more affordable option than the car. So in terms of planning for micromobility, we're getting close to wrapping up here. There's a couple ideas, high-level ideas around accelerating micromobility, thinking about what's needed for education and training, the different types of rideshare systems, both microtransit and micro delivery systems are have both great potential, regulations that would be required at the local, state, potentially federal level too, and then federal and state grants. Just the amount of money that's out there is definitely not enough, but there are some options. So some of the high level kind of game changers to advance micromobility, as just a few points, is building that network of greenways, considering a citywide 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, really envisioning micromobility for all our transportation needs, people, services, and goods, recreation needs, school needs, figuring out are there partnerships that can be bolstered either from rideshare, micro transport, or delivery systems, thinking about how we can have a standard set of regulations to really help make sure there's clarity about how we use and operate these devices on our city streets and pathways, supporting safety and training, potentially licensing systems for micromobility devices. And as mentioned earlier, really thinking about how to create incentives and rebates for those disadvantaged communities. So with that, I'll maybe just stop there and see if there are any questions. I'm happy to go back into any slides. If there are particular questions, we can see about going into more depth as well too. Yes.
Some of the parking examples you provided included charging infrastructure.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering, is that just because that's a nice to have, or is there a sense or data suggesting that lack of charging discourages people from using e-bikes or something else like that? I just assumed when the day comes that I buy an e-bike, I'll be charging it at home. And my main criteria for whether I use it is whether the route is safe and whether there's secure parking, but not whether I can charge.
Yeah, I think maybe those examples could be relevant in both cases. If you're low on a charge and you're out and you need to, or you're going for a longer ride, having those public charging stations might be good and helpful just to, finish that last leg of your journey. The other way to think about it might be in terms of those are the bike share stations also. So those would be just rechargeable scooters, bikes. So that's where they would be located. After you plug them in, they start the recharging process. So that's kind of their home.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense. But
Okay.
and I understand that charging for shared mobility devices might be a nice feature to have.
Mhm.
So you're not as reliant on whoever's running the system to make sure those devices get charged every night.
Mhm.
But then I was thinking about the cost of running electricity to each charging, and I was like, I'd rather have that money spent on a buffered bike lane or a protected bike lane than have it spent on charging at my destination
Mhm.
if I'm biking downtown.
Yeah, that was one of the bigger points we heard repeatedly at the conference, was just building that network, building that safe space is really what's going to get the most people out. That's the biggest concern. Being able to electrify it, I think is a great next step, but we need to make sure that there's, safe routes, I think, first to really have that sea change of riders. Yes.
The 20-mile-an-hour speed limit versus say, which is currently 15. So you're proposing that bike paths go to 20 miles per hour?
This would actually be for streets, not for bike paths necessarily. The bike paths speed limit, I think, is a different discussion potentially, and wasn't one that we really delved into, but something we could absolutely bring up, now in consideration. But the 20-mile-per-hour example was thinking about on those green connector streets, for instance.
On the connector street.
Yeah, or those greenways,
So
right?
bike lanes, in other words, not bike lanes, but bike paths would be made. Like pedestrian and cycling and.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think, Ken, maybe you could speak to this a little bit also. I know this is a conversation I had with Bjorn about, the bike paths in Petaluma. There's not really a speed limit necessarily. Is there a standard say no, what's allowed there?
We don't have, we don't have that, and it's definitely an issue that I think we're gonna have to grapple with. And thank you for your presentation. Started out, with the speed differentials are pretty significant. Marja, you've been on like Lynch Creek Trail and have some understanding of all, how it's a real mix.
15.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
suggesting 15, no
Mhm.
higher than 15.
Right.
And we are really concerned.
Some of the new bikes that the kids are riding with no helmets, I would add. In many communities, and it's been in the papers that they're looking at how to license. They've taken, there's like these bikes with 15 horsepower that are doing wheelies down the street. And I think that is an issue that needs to be brought up, because some of the electric bikes are getting faster and faster. 30 to 35 would be a cruising speed on some. Which is. I'm not worried on the street, but on and those unicycles, those
Mhm.
one wheel things. I've seen those things going like 40 miles an hour. It's just like, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to be standing up, but I'll put them on a bike path. That doesn't seem reasonable, but. So I think that needs to be dealt with or talked about this. There's a real difference in speeds. Somebody who's going 25 with passing somebody on a narrow. Going 15 or 12 would be
Mhm.
average probably.
Yeah, agreed. Education and training, licensing potentially, all are important things to address that. Yes.
I'd be curious to hear from a community where electrified micromobility devices are in wider use already.
Mhm.
And so based on, I was in Santa Barbara last summer for, I don't know, a week or two for work, and I lived there years ago. But I was just puttering around town, was impressed by the great infrastructure changes that they have made or in the process of making. But I was also astounded by the number of electric bikes everywhere in town. Which on the one hand was an awesome thing of, if you build the infrastructure, people will use it. And if you provide the e-bikes that help people get up and down Santa Barbara's hills, there'll be way more people on bikes. But then it also felt like in so many situations, the vehicle technology of the e-bikes was outstripping what the city was prepared for. So that I, as a pedestrian, encountered e-bikes on sidewalks and in all sorts of places where I didn't want to encounter them. And then even as a driver in traffic would have e-bikes passing me on the right. So I felt like I was at a greater risk of right hooking somebody if I turned. And so while there's great acknowledgement in the presentation, and I think we all know that we need better infrastructure, it feels like right now the vehicles are coming into use faster than the infrastructure can keep up. And so I don't know if Santa Barbara for example, has thoughts on what they wish they could do to better accommodate e-bikes and how places like Santa Rosa or Sonoma County that are a little farther behind on e-bike adoption what we can learn from that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I noticed that in San Diego on a trip recently, also very hilly, lots of e-bikes, scooters
Yeah.
just everywhere, zipping up and down these. Yeah, you've been down there, canyons everywhere. So the examples that have come from this, from the conference, though, the ones that I heard were primarily from Paris and from New York City. So they still are challenged in terms of, for New York City, about how to share these lanes with so many different speeds. They haven't figured that out yet. There are ideas of maybe trying to shift them around, but if you can go as fast as a car, you know, should you be with the cars, or are you more vulnerable? Should you have your own space? I think that's still kind of undetermined at this point, in terms of maybe best practices or what have you. The things that were coming up primarily, I think, from lessons learned was about the recharging of the batteries. And so let's see, in terms of New York, they passed a citywide ordinance to make sure that any batteries sold within the city are of a certain safety standard. You can get cheap batteries from all over anywhere in the world that don't meet that safety standard. When you start to plug them in and charge them, they don't have the safety mechanisms to like shut off when they're charged. That leads to fires. And so that was one of the big issues that the city, New York City, was doing, was trying to just make that safer. Where Paris had gone a little bit further was that they have a more built out electric kind of tricycle or scooter delivery system that has multiple, you know, different I think companies or scooters that have kind of a standard battery, and to be able to take that risk of fire outside of the homes, they built up infrastructure to have essentially battery recharging stations along main pinch points of roads that are fireproofed, have the necessary electrical wiring. And so then as a delivery person, you might have some special card or code to be able to just swap that out. So when your battery runs low, you just go by the station, you swap it out, and then you're on your way, no risk, you know, fire necessarily, minimal risk. So those are some of the innovations, again, mostly, kind of battery related that I saw. Still challenged on how to kind of find that shared space though, at the different speeds.
Yeah, that was the thing in Santa Barbara, was shared space, and then the variety of speeds that everybody was moving at became more apparent.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when, yes, there were a bunch of like 12-year-old boys riding in large packs on motorized, electric bikes and popping wheelies. It looked like fun, but
Yeah, they look like one.
yeah.
Zeno, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Adam, for interesting to hear about what happened in Richmond. I was thinking about, was there any talk about integration with transit? Because although maybe the majority of the trips that we take are short distance, and also the short distance have less climate impact than when I go from Sebastopol to Healdsburg. So there is a need still for facilities that deal with these mid-sized distances that I don't see a lot of people soon going on an e-bike for. So integration with transit seems an important consideration. And I'm wondering whether you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. Thank you, Zeno. Let's see. So I think maybe two things come to mind. One about kind of location, being able to have, you know, have that first and last mile trip, you know, be connected by an e-bike or an e-scooter, you know, with transit as the middle leg. What I think some of the discussion was being able to have bike share systems, both, you know, at those transit stations, but also, you know, dispersed around neighborhoods as well too. So there can be that exchange between where people live and then trying to get to, say that those transit stops. So that's kind of in terms of location setup. This second part is actually thinking more about the cost. So and combining costs specifically, if you rent that, e-bike just for that trip, that rental price should also then, or could, one idea was, could also then count as your transit fare as well. So then you have that one continuous trip kind of paid for. You're not having to add on costs, a bike share on one end, your transit trip, a bike share on the other end. That's all considered one. So that, I think, was one of the interesting ideas to come out of the conference as well.
One last question here well, and maybe there's other questions, but what's the status of TAM and SCTA and the bike share? Is that, oh,
Yeah, so
there you go.
we do have an update on the agenda. If we want to wait for that, or I could talk about it now if you want.
oh, is it on the agenda?
Well, there's just the shared micromobility updates, which is a standing item, but we do have updates.
Okay.
So I'll
it's
leave
on
it
the
up to
back.
you if
I'm
you
sorry,
wanna-
no.
If you want to talk about it now or.
This is Adam's show, whatever you'd like, Adam.
Yeah, maybe we could wrap this up. There's some other, updates we can get to, but if if there are no other questions, maybe we could move on to the next
Good.
item. Hearing none. All right. Good.
Thank you very much, Adam. Appreciate it. Regional funding, item 6 here. So TDA, TFCA, quarterly report.
All right, so the quarterly report for it should actually be FY24 Q1 is in your agenda packet on page 6 and 7. Page 6 is the TDA Article 3 projects that are open right now and as of the end of September. Let's see, those are all pretty current projects. We don't have any funding expirations coming up until June 2025. On the TFCA side, we do have highlighted a few upcoming or expirations that are either just passed or upcoming in there. But yeah, please let me know if you have any questions about either of those programs.
Any questions in the room here before we go virtual? Okay, any questions virtually?
Question about the Roundtable project. Anyone knows about the trail to Crane Creek?
Yeah.
I saw an article in the paper that was
So generally,
disheartening, I guess.
well, that's a way to look at it. So we went out to bid for the traffic signal, which is one aspect of the trail project, and then the traffic signal will be at Pedestrian Hill Road and Norrell Drive. And then there's the trail that goes from that intersection all the way up to Crane Creek Regional Park. The bids came in significantly higher than we thought. So we are working with Sonoma County Regional Parks to kind of tighten up the bids. So like one, make it more of a trail project and less of a road project, because our original design accounted for, it was basically designed as a road. And that takes a lot of contractors out of the mix if they're not road contractors, but they Sonoma Parks have a lot more contacts and are going to be maintaining this trail, so they're comfortable with us making it a little less road-like.
So is the trail, wasn't the light, wasn't the signal?
No,
The trail cost?
well, I mean, the signal cost was going to cost 620,000 or so. So that's, that's not a small cost.
No, because it doesn't seem like you need a signal there. I don't know how much traffic goes in and out of that. Well, it's only it.
But to cross Pedestrian Hill Road, the county required a signal. So we originally suggested potentially a Hawk or a 2-phase intersection, and their determination was it wasn't safe enough, so they wanted a full intersection at Laurel Drive.
What, did they resolve the closeness to the expressway stoplight? And then the distance to the opening of the trail? Thought there was an issue with how close that was.
As far as I know, there wasn't an issue. I think originally they were concerned with making sure those signals could be coordinated. But because they both can be coordinated, then it's not really an issue.
Okay.
I have a question about something you said. I don't know, why would a path have been designed to a road standard?
Because, well, roads don't go away, so if you're designing a pathway, you don't want it to be like eroding like a lot of our current pathways do.
I think the ones that have large fissures in them.
Yeah,
like tire.
they're terrible, right? And so you design it with, thick aggregate base, you design it with, a thicker section of park tread or,
Good job.
some sort of bound pavement. And that in theory should be able to maintain all the, person traffic plus, there are parks trucks that go up, probably a couple times a day for maintenance, or once a day for maintenance, right? So if you keep that maintenance section a lot less, you're gonna have erosion and deterioration issues, but it'll be a lot cheaper. So it's kind of which do you prefer as a as an entity of Sonoma Regional Parks.
So then okay, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then it leads me to wonder, well, would we get more bang for the buck? Could we design more paths if you didn't have to worry about the damage caused, for example, by parks trucks going up?
Yeah.
What if parks used e-bikes or each, an tricycle or something?
I mean, they carry a lot of, so like Burner Parks trucks, which is, it's flat, it's not hills. We carry they carry chainsaws, they carry all sorts of equipment to maintain these areas. And so it might be an idea, but I don't know if it would work for, maintenance crews.
Okay.
And then the other thing is.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to challenge and push here to say, if we want to reduce transportation emissions, one of the sources is driving the bigger vehicles than we often need, and we're looking to try to electrify as much as possible, so. In the parks.
I think that's a very valid point.
Yeah.
We need to keep pushing that. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly, so I'm just.
Yeah.
this is an
Yeah,
example of
no,
like, oh, I never thought about doing it.
Well, and so this path also has to be ADA compliant, which is, tough for a lot of park trails to be ADA compliant for a long period of time. So,
Because of deterioration of the concrete or
Yeah.
the asphalt.
And the slope, right?
But-
Is a slope considered as well?
yeah, it's over.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's a, yeah.
Oh, well, yes, 7% this way, but then 2%?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of design consideration that go into the pathways, and Petaluma has a lot of the drainage maintenance roads. They're a pathway. Lynch Creek Trail is a drainage maintenance road. If you ever needed to get out there and clean out one of the outlets, they have check valves on them. It's so it may look at a pathway at one particular point in time, but it's the design considerations can be pretty broad. But I do think I agree with you. I feel like we ought to find ways to be able to use smaller vehicles. I talked to the Petaluma Police Department. Do you really need a big Harley? Could we get something smaller? It hasn't gone anywhere. So, I mean, I think there's boundless opportunities to try to change things on this. Okay, with that, anything virtual? I can't really see if there's any hands up.
The top person.
Who is it? Okay. All right, so updates, maybe what we'll do is just go around the room here before we go virtually. So Dana, do you have anything?
I'll do my updates when we get to the
Okay. there we
counters
go.
and
JP,
share my mobility.
No, I don't really have any big updates other than, like Dana's mentioned a couple times, we're moving pretty quickly. We're trying to button up our active transportation plan targeting February for completion. I'm going, every month I'm going to the planning commission, which is our bike and pedestrian advisory committee. Just with little updates and have them kind of helping craft the entire thing as opposed to delivering it to them. And watching them react. That will happen in the city council. Hopefully, if they feel like the planning commission has been involved every step of the way. They'll feel good about it. Other than that, no.
Adam?
No updates particular. I'll have something to talk about in the pedestrian counters.
Good.
Yeah.
Mario?
Yeah, I wanted to bring our latest slogan. This is Petaluma. And we are saying slow the fast down. And we have, we're trying to sell the community on this. We were in the local Veterans Day Parade with a great big huge banner and chatting it up with the people on the sidelines. So now we're just trying to PR this. We want people to slow down, obviously. And so it's kind of fun. I just thought I'd bring that to your attention. We also sent out, at least I received a mailer today, so it's coming out in mailer form. And yeah, I'm kind of excited about it. I'm a member of the Bike and Head Committee, and one of our biggest concerns is the speed of our streets. And so this hopefully will provide a little bit of welcome relief. And the other thing I wanted to bring up was, as was mentioned earlier by some of you, we have just, I think we finished North McDowell, correct? And almost.
We
More or
can, we
less.
can say that. Yeah, I'm not gonna get into the weeds on it, but we'll say it's finished.
But if you haven't had an opportunity to come and see what buffered bike lanes look like, we have some fabulous ones that we would love to have you come and view. They're bright green, you can't miss them. So far we haven't, I don't think we've lost any to vehicular hits or what have you, or bicycles crashing into them. And someone asked earlier in the meeting about how are you gonna clean along that bike path. I believe Bjorn has looked into ordering a small street sweeper, which will be used in this kind of fashion. But anyway, if you haven't seen our Petaluma Boulevard, not Petaluma Boulevard, sorry, North McDowell Boulevard, please come and take a look. It's marvelous. And we have worked on, Ken has worked on this tirelessly for 3 years, and it's finally coming to fruition with a lot of talk.
Thank you.
Was that a road diet, lane reduction?
Not lane reduction, but lane narrowing.
Lane narrow?
Yeah.
And you brought up a really good point that I never thought of in these class 4 protected bike lanes is how do you keep the debris out
Yeah.
of the bike lane?
And I'd like to, if folks have ideas, let me know. The small electric street sweeper that Marja had mentioned, it's $250,000. And, we're trying to find other places, other communities in the Bay Area where they've used those and get some background on them. But, you solve one problem and there may be another problem that's developed from that. And that's kind of where we are with trying to keep the gutter areas clean.
Yeah.
So.
I have a question about your public education campaign. Are those being put out as yard signs as well?
Yeah. In fact, we had a survey come out today, and if you answer the few questions of the survey, you get your choice of whether you want this was a grade sign, but I think it's like this with some kind of a stake on the bottom, but you could take this or you could take something else as a reward. One was a car magnet, I think. It basically says slow the fast down. We had lots of comments, public comment when we showed this, needless to say.
I'll just say, those bike paths are dirty enough that I don't want to ride in them anymore. There's enough gravel and stuff that hasn't gotten cleared. I mean, we don't have a big enough rain or wind or whatever, but they need to be swept.
Yeah.
To be functional. And with the barriers there, you don't have a choice to go around a bad section. But it's way better than it was. I'm not really complaining. It's way better, but something in there to clean those bike paths would even if you had a guy go blow them. As a
Yeah, I know
recommendation.
that is done in some municipalities where they actually have a street sweeper that's outside of that, and then somebody, two-person operation, somebody blowing it into the street sweeper, so, yeah.
Would help, I mean, until you have something.
Yeah.
Available, but. I think at the county level, we're just doing a lot of paving and everything's finishing up, so. Moscow Road is gonna be done, I think that's the amazing one, so.
Alexander?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big question for us too, is the sweeping, right? And we're just looking into different options to try to, figure out what to do. Because there's definitely a lot of potential where we would like to install class 4s. But then I think we need to like raise that bar and be like, okay, this is just a temporary solution. We should be looking to ways to add either like a raised bike lane, right? It's separated that way, or use stormwater mitigation as our buffer. So like GI, so green infrastructure. I know I was in the ATP planning workshop or their working group through MTC, and they talked about that a lot, the green infrastructure, and trying to work with your stormwater team to get grants or whatever and whatnot to do separated bike lanes with green infrastructure. So like bioretention and whatnot.
No, I think that's got big potential. The challenge with that particularly for Petaluma is just the expansive soils and geology.
Yeah.
Primarily on the east side just isn't conducive to that, so,
Yeah, I was also thinking the maintenance to those bioretention areas could be a big hurdle as well.
Yeah.
But just things to think about,
Yeah.
And then my update is that we have a Safe Routes to School task force meeting this Friday. And it's at 10:30 at the Santa Rosa City School District office on Ridgeway.
When you're there, can you ask about the facilities update and what they're doing at the high school? The rumor has it is taking out portable classrooms and is adding parking or car drop off or something.
Jason?
Sure. We are looking into doing buffered bike lanes, either like a cycle track or just buffered bike lanes on Adrian Drive in Roanoke Park. We have a community meeting about it on December 11th from 6 to 7 at City Hall. So you're all welcome to come. And that will definitely be something to bring up, maintaining those buffered areas to be sure that they can be clean enough for people to ride in.
So it'd be a class 4 bike lanes? Is it a cycle track or just bike lanes?
So we have 3 options. So Adrian Drive is 45 feet wide. Our kind of like 3 options that we're presenting is, leave it as is, which is, basically a 12-foot parking strip, 12-foot travel lane, 12-foot travel lane, 12-foot parking, or no, 2 10-foot travel lanes, then another 12-foot parking strip. So it's a 25-mile-an-hour road, it's residential, but people drive 35 very comfortably. So one option is remove a parking strip and have, a parking protected bike lane, a parking lane, travel lane, and then a buffered bike lane. And then the other option is 2-lane cycle track, a buffer, a 30-inch buffer, and then parking lane, travel lane, parking lane. So if you're interested, come to the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You don't want driveways. A lot of these ideas seem great, but I look at Katati and I'm like, driveway, and I can't do these kind of long spans of either drainage or, protected bikeways, and there's only a couple roads where I think we could be best for it. And Adrian didn't seem like one that would be.
What's wrong with having the driveways?
Well,
I'm gathering information still, so I'm curious.
Well, it's just because you can't do a stretch of any length of protection because you had a driveway, when you put a bollard and then another driveway.
So we're thinking, as far as like, you're gonna have the buffer that's gonna be a 30-inch striped buffer with the the plastic, gosh, the K71s out there.
K71s, yeah.
And then basically, but I mean, nothing physical is gonna stop a vehicle from turning into the bike lane if they can't figure it out. I mean, that's gonna be some growing pains for people in the neighborhood. But that's kind of how it is when you put anything new anywhere. You know, drivers end up on the smart train sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it'll be a test.
How far apart are the bollards spaced? Like
Well,
there would be a gap, if it's just a residential driveway, you're still gonna have to.
they'd be, I mean, ideally quite far apart, you know, so
Okay.
these bollards aren't in the bike lane, they're in the buffer.
Right, they're in the buffer.
Yeah, and so, I mean, ideally 20 feet or so. So maybe like if each driveway is separated by, Adrian Drive is pretty big lots because it's an older neighborhood. You know, if it's 50 feet, you know, between each driveway, you maybe have three, one on each end and then one in the middle.
But then, and then you're saying in addition to the bollards, you then have,
Striping.
right, but did you also say there'll be parking? So it's a combination parking protected and bollard protected?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, well, the bollards are just to keep the cars from
From
parking
parking,
into it.
Right, into a bicycle.
Right, and from storing. I've heard it too.
Thank you.
We're going ahead with removing so we, on the Foss Creek Trail, we have the 3 bollards on all the entry and exit ways. We're moving the outer 2, we're doing striping along them, just kind of around and 50 feet out. And we're also striping some areas along the pathway where there, people have observed some kind of like blind turns, just to prevent any collisions. We're also looking at, city council wants us to put some bike corrals downtown in Healdsburg. Originally, they want us to look at parklets and car parking spots. We've got a lot of pushback from businesses about that. There is that law, it's AB 243. I think it's gonna be, I might have that number wrong, but in 2025, for all like active intersections, it's like within 20 feet, you can't have car parking spots.
Daylighting the intersection, so.
But you can't have bike parking, so we might hold off on analyzing any parking spots, because when that comes out, then we can be like, well, you know, we have to. But yeah, we're looking at some parklets right now. So.
Thank you very much. I've got, actually, we'll go virtually if, anybody, I don't know, John, City of Sebastopol, do you want to, anything chime in?
Yeah, so I just have a couple of things. We worked on, earlier this month, we had our first ATP public engagement series. So that was good. And then on top of that, I'm working with Annalee High School and a couple local bike groups to hold another public engagement series to look at some of like the safe routes to schools and get some of the youth members of the public engaged in the ATP plan, because we've seen that that's kind of a low number of our survey results and stuff like that. So that'll be happening on December 14th at Annalee High School. So if anybody is interested in coming out or supporting us, we'd happy to help you. And that's all that I have for Sebastopol. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Derek, Montana, Cloverdale, anything?
No, nothing right now.
How about Zoe Smart?
Sure, hi there. So a couple of things at Smart. We have a lot of pathway under construction right now. About 9.2 miles across Sonoma and Marin, with most of that being in Sonoma, and that includes the segments in construction between Petaluma and Pengrove, as well as the segment between Roanoke Park and Santa Rosa. And then of course the Windsor extension is once again underway, and so is the pathway component of that. So that's all very exciting. And then of course we've been working on a pathway wayfinding effort. We conducted a survey
in late October. Had some signs in the field and we were really pleased with that response rate. Had a little over 350 responses. And so we're working on finalizing that design through the input that was received. And that is it for us.
Great. Thank you very much, Zoe. Yeah, there's a lot of really good work going on with SMART there. We're excited in Petaluma. Steve Schmitz with Sonoma County. Anything?
There's no updates.
Oh, no updates. Okay. How about Orlando with Caltrans?
Sorry, I have no updates.
Okay, thank you. Going to Sonoma County Bike Coalition and also Christina on the safe routes to schools, if there's anything on your end. I guess Emily first. So,
Thanks. I don't have anything. Thank you.
okay. Tina?
We had Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day in November. It was so great. We had 60 schools participate, which is double what we had last year. And even though it was kind of a rainy morning on the 14th, some schools celebrated on a different day of November. It was really successful. We had a lot of schools participate in that event that don't even engage with the Safe Routes program normally. So that was really cool. And this December, we have a wacky winter walk and roll theme for our walk and roll to school challenges. And if you go to our Sonoma Safe Routes website, there's a really cute scavenger hunt that kids can do with their parents. And it has, identifying, safe routes to school infrastructure on it, plus, a lot of fun things to do on their walks to school or just on their walks in their neighborhood. Alexander mentioned that we're facilitating the task forces in Santa Rosa, which is this Friday. And we also have a task force meeting in Petaluma on December 21st, Thursday at 4 at the Petaluma Community Center. And those have been really a great opportunity to bring together folks from the schools and from the districts and from the city and other partners that relate to Safe Routes. So those have been really good so far, and I'm looking forward to those continuing.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much, Tina. I just feel like you do any work around schools, we've got no shortage of connector roadways around schools that are degraded in Petaluma, and people can't have a lot of opposition if you're trying to get kids to school safely, and it makes projects go pretty well. And it seems like you get a lot of good work done. And then the other is, 20% of the traffic, this is in Marin, is, peak hour traffic is related to people, taking their kids to school, picking them up. So if you want to reduce traffic congestion and increase public health, schools are a good way of doing it. So,
Christine, I just had a quick follow-up question, kind of what we were talking about previously around micromobility and just the need for kind of training and safety licensing. I'm wondering if there's been any discussion at the Bike Coalition just around, because you are obviously the foundation of a lot of that bike education. Is there any discussion around educating maybe kind of the older students, those that are riding, the e-scooters, e-bikes, around, safe operation of, those more powerful mobility devices?
We have had classes at the Bike Coalition for e-bikes for adults. Right now, we're not working with many high schools. We don't have the curriculum really for high school. Like, we haven't had that happening yet, but we've definitely discussed it. And when we work with middle school students, we do kind of address that in our middle school bike education just generally. I think that's a great idea. I think it's needed, but we just haven't had the capacity to really, do that yet, just staffing and funding wise.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Ken, I have a question.
Yeah.
Christina, could you repeat the date and time for the Petaluma meeting?
Yes, it's Thursday, December 21st, 4 p.m. to 5:30 at the Petaluma Community Center Activity Room.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else? Did I miss anybody? Okay, I'm gonna just for Petaluma, actually, Drew, if you could enable my screen sharing real quick here. I'm just gonna show you a little bit about class 4, what we've been doing in Petaluma here. See if I can get this set up here. Sharing, trying to get here. This doesn't, I gotta stop sharing a minute here, drag this back out, I think. So on the class 4 facility for Petaluma, North McDowell, I did a little bit of research, just sort of what's going on in other parts of the Bay Area. The city of Alameda has done a lot of stuff there. So Rochelle Wheeler, she's been, long involved in bike ped activities. But I'm going to start with Alameda. So they sort of an initial generation in Alameda. This is a buffered cycle track. 4-foot lanes, and I think that's either a 3 or 4 foot, that's a 3-foot buffer. They used these traffic logics buffers, and they got hit a lot and kind of ended up unfortunately being shrapnel on the road, and the maintenance crews hated them. So, and I think part of the problem is they put them on the outside of the buffer, but I just don't think that that did not work real well according to them. This here is something that they did that seems to be holding up. So they got the K71s, and then you've got and I don't know if these are rubber or concrete, the parking blocks, but putting those in between. So this is again a cycle track, and I think it's a good representation of what might be possible. And then for North McDowell, we've got a 5-foot bike lane and 2 to 3 foot width buffer, and we got the K71s in there. And to JP's comment with regard to driveways, we have no shortage of driveways, but you put the green paint for to identify the conflict zones. The bollards, I don't call them bollards, but the K71s, the vertical elements get spaced to 20 foot in width. So people could pull in there if there's an emergency vehicle, but the number 2 lane here, people just can pull in number 2 and let emergency vehicles pass in the number 1. Lane widths are 10 and a half for the number 1, and then 11 feet for the number 2, and 11 feet is Golden Gate Transit. That was kind of their thing. They're not servicing this, but they liked 11 feet for the buses. So and they're, these things are getting hit a little bit. There you go. There's one, but they seem to be holding up, and, they've got a single hinge, and it's fairly robust. And they're $100 per material to install these. So that's the news there. So any questions, anything?
The caps on them.
The caps are, when they get hit, the cap pops off. And so and I'm hoping that they don't fill with water and in the rain season. So, like I say, we solve one problem, we may have a few others to
Drill some holes, but I've seen the caps in the bike lane.
Yeah.
And I wondered what they're just for rain, to keep water out.
Well, the cap is, I think that's the means for the installation. So you'd go down there and you'd have some sort of an expansion bolt that's, been drilled into the pavement, into the structure there, and then you tighten it on there, and that's the access, put the cap on there. But when they get hit, the caps are popping off. So yeah. Anyway, so there you go. Say again?
Are they reflective or they glide?
They are, no, they are reflective. The white bands are highly reflective. So, yeah, and this is a K71s. Who makes K71? I think it's Traffic Logics. I think it's Traffic Logics that's making them. So, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
You said you got away with the 10-foot lane, or did you say 10 and a half?
We are using 10 and 10.5 foot lanes for the number one lane, and then 11 foot. 11 foot outside. We have, double-digit percentage of truck traffic on here. This is a main, business route for Petaluma. It's got high ADT. East Washington's a little higher, but this is over 20,000 ADT with over, I believe it's over 15% truck traffic. So, the main postal distribution facility is there at Corona, and, no shortage of industry there. So stay tuned and we'll figure out how to get the gutter clean. We're working on that, but I do hope, if we ever wanted to form an ad hoc committee with Santa Rosa or other communities that are doing it, we should try to do that collectively. And, when we get to the point where we're going to go buy something, we could do that collectively and maybe get, a bargain or a lower price on things and just try to, collaborate on it. So.
Well, that Alameda trolley should look like it was wide enough that you could drive a sweeper truck down.
Yeah, I mean, I worked with Recology and actually met the driver out there and the general manager. And I said, well, just, don't just use your inside. The truck width is 8.5 feet. And they run the brushes out. And it ends up being a full 12 feet. I said, well, just, on the outside, just don't run the brushes. You can bring those, you can retract them. And they get grumpy if they have to change things. And so, but that was, I think you can do it. So if you design 11-foot, buffered bike lanes, you can get a street sweeper down there. They just don't use the brushes on the outside. So, yeah.
Is this something that could be built into the city's next trash contract with Recology? That Recology would have to acquire a street sweeper that could do the lane?
I think that's a very good idea. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't work for us
Yeah.
here in Santa Rosa because our trash contract isn't up till 2032.
I mean,
Don't ask me how I know,
you
but
can write amendments to the contracts. It's got to be a willingness to do that. So,
Yeah.
right,
Is it Recology?
yeah.
Recology.
Well, I think we ought to maybe have a broader discussion, with Recology, frankly, I mean, they were good enough to bring a operator and their vehicle out there when I worked on Rainier, and it's like, let's do a test case, let's figure this out. And I was in design and I put out cones and I said, let's just present, assume this buffered bike lane goes in here, let's see how you do this. And I thought we worked through it. It's still, change is hard, but I think there is a solution that's very viable. So.
Well, also, if then Recology could buy one sweeper that would end up narrow sweeper that would service most of the county.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good.
And then maybe
Yeah.
the extra high powered to actually get the gravel out of the.
Yeah, or we could pave our roads. So it's kind of street sweeping gravel is a challenge. It's clean gravel though.
We have a deal with Ecology where they will sweep county roads. In each district, they have 5 roads that we got to select as a committee, and they do a pretty good job now. I mean, Petaluma Hill is one of them, if anybody's been on that one. So.
Yeah, and you have segments of Petaluma Boulevard North that I believe, those are county, and I think I have requested the street sweeping in those areas, and it's happening.
Stony Point entrance into town and out of town is supposed to be done at the county.
Right.
And I think there's a couple of other places. Oh, we put the new bike path going south of town, like from the bridge where the county segments start going out to the
Right.
overpass.
Onto the smart multi-use path.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yep. On from Crystal Lane roundabout on out. So, yeah.
So.
Okay, that's all I have. Stop sharing. We've got item 7.2, the shared mobility updates.
Yeah, so for the shared micromobility program led by SCTA and the Transportation Authority of Marin, we completed our procurement process, had a committee review the proposals that were sent in and made a recommendation. That recommendation is we have a contract that's final touches are being negotiated right now, but we're planning to bring it to our board on Monday, the 11th. And so I think it's pretty much, public information at this point, as the agenda is going to be going out in a matter of days. I'll just share with this group that we are recommending a contract with Drop Mobility. And so that is that it would be a contract for a 2-year pilot program with 300 pedal electric assist bikes.
2 years?
2 year,
Not 3.
not 3. And that would be 300 bikes. Roughly the same areas we're looking at as we were in the last contract. So that would be kind of between Santa Rosa and Larkspur, and really focused around the smart stations and downtown areas. So yeah, we're excited about the company. They've been around for a long time and operate in a number of different cities around the country. And yeah, looking at a roughly 6-month time frame once the contract is completed to get it started.
Are we going to be putting together the bike share committee?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, we have some initial things to work through with the company. Like after contracting is done, we'll get things organized before we bring that committee together. But yeah, we do plan on bringing that committee together and mostly to coordinate on the permitting processes.
So we're not gonna have the universal coordination agreement like last time?
No, we've really pulled a lot of that into the funding agreement or for the program. And if there are things that each jurisdiction wants to have in their agreement on top of that could be in the permitting
I guess
process.
we'll just need to see the agreement that you have, because there were things like, well, what happens if they abandon the equipment?
Mhm.
All those kind of issues, and who's gonna be responsible for paying for what?
Yeah.
And do you think we're gonna be able to kind of dust all of the work that we did previously, just sort of dust it off?
That is the hope. I mean, I think that we went through a process for a number of different sites, right? To at least at the staff level approve them. Some jurisdictions had actually approved the permits, but we had gone through a process to vet those, and we should be able to use that. Again, the dimensions of everything may be slightly different, but my sense is that those locations should not change, right? The viability of doing having those sites should not have changed, at least not very much since then. So we'll be submitting all of those materials to the new operator. And
So are you the project manager?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any idea when all of that might actually begin?
yeah, so we're expecting it to be summer 2024.
To start construction.
The construction is really just putting, but yeah, to start the program operating installation.
That's pretty.
The installation is modular racks. So, fairly easy to install. But yeah, we do expect, especially with the, you know, the work that's been done so far, to be able to get those permits through, and plan out the system in roughly 6-month time frame.
You said that's going your word December 11th.
Yes.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, bicycle and pedestrian counters, I guess that's you, Adam?
I think this first one will be Dana and I'll.
Oh,
follow up.
okay.
Yeah, so I'll take the first piece of this. So as you all know, we have SCTA purchased EcoCounters to count bicyclists and pedestrians that we loan out to the various jurisdictions throughout the county. And we purchased those in 2014, and they now need the infrared counters need battery replacements. Adam, feel free to jump in if I'm missing anything. And the tube counters to count the bicyclists are getting worn and need replacement. So we are looking at ways to replace those components of the counters and keep the program going so that we can continue to offer these movable, temporary, automated counters. When we purchased these, we used the TDA Article 3 funding, and kind of took that off the top of our annual funding that's distributed to the jurisdictions for that year. At that time, we spent roughly $30,000 on getting that equipment, and we got some quotes for the components that need to be replaced, and it looks like it's roughly $30,000 just with inflation over the years to replace just those pieces. So we do plan to come back to this committee once the TDA Article 3 call for projects is released to request that we take funding from that source again to pay for these replacements. So I just wanted to bring it up now and give a heads up, and of course we're happy to take any feedback or comments on it now, but be making a more formal ask of the committee once that call for project is out.
Good. Adam?
Yeah, so this is moving on to the idea of permanent counters. So we obviously, what Dana was talking about was just temporary ones, free to loan out, use for a few weeks. And one of things we've been aware of is just the need to be able to track progress over a longer period of time than just 2-week stints or month-long stints. And looking to SMART, Zoe's actually on the call, and we'll hopefully give her thoughts in just a few moments. But just figuring out, because they have permanent stations along the SMART trail, about 4 or 5 of them, just to be able to say, what are the trends, since this bike path started, or these are pinch points potentially that a lot of bicyclists we know are going to be passing through. Can we track the trends? Pedestrians, I should say too, scooters, they can note those differences now, the bike counters. So I just wanted to bring up this idea, for the various jurisdictions, like, is being able to track that data over years, is that something that might be of interest, that we'd want to be able to invest in our own permanent counters, similar to what SMART's done. So what I have is just a rather extensive kind of quote. I'm just from Ecovisio, they're the folks that put together these counters. They're operating essentially Canada and the US. They're run out of Montreal. I can make this available if folks want, but I just wanted to be able to share just a few of the highlights of understanding what the counters can offer, what they look like. And then Zoe, I'll pass it off to you just after this quick little sharing session. Okay, so what we see here on the left is, our cityscape, variety of different places. There's paths for people to walk, there's horses, there's scooters. Thinking about how we'd want to be able to count those. Who do we want to count? What are the things that maybe we want to track long term? So there's ones that are on the ground. There's ones that are, counting just bicyclists. There's ones that count both bicyclists and pedestrians. There's ones that count bicyclists, pedestrians, and horses, or bicyclists, pedestrians, and cars. The whole variety. They count everything if you want to do the artificial intelligence version. So you can kind of see that on the right side. On the top, we have, the user, the light green chartreuse are the different models of counters. And then on the left is kind of like the situation, the location that we're looking at. So is it mobile? Is it permanent? Are we looking at sidewalks? We want to count scooters. So you can use that grid to kind of be able to say, well, depending on what our needs are, what might be of most interest to us. So just to go through a few of these examples. So this one on the left, the pyro sensor, I think that's most likely going to be the one that we will get. It might not be 4G wireless. It'll likely be the kind that you just have to go and Bluetooth connect to, and then when you're done, you can download it. If there's that strong desire to have instant uploadable data, if it's a permanent one, then maybe having that 4G option is more attractive. Let's see. That's there. I mean, think they've done same size. It doesn't say size. You get a sense of the cost there, though, in terms of what their range is, and if it's bi-direction or not. I think it's. I'm trying to look for an image of it. That picture, but I can't see it, so it's not that big. But I want to say it's kind of like about a small briefcase. Like it's gotten smaller, I think, too. That's why it's so compact. But they also have posts as well too, a wooden post, recycled posts. And note that these are just infrared, so that's just counting pedestrians. Let's see. The other example is looking at bicyclists. So this is one that you would say install in the ground. So this diamond shape is what you would install in the pavement. This box would be underground somewhere. You can kind of see the various configurations on the right-hand side too, depending on what your lane structure is and how you'd want to count folks. There's options of counting scooters as well too, which I thought was interesting. Maybe they're measuring the length of the tire or something like that as it rolls along. So they're starting to get very smart. And then looking at the multi-use ones. So these are a combination. They have infrared on the bar and then the little diamonds on the ground. So you can say, well, was that a scooter that went by? Was that a person? Was that a horse? Was that a car? There's a variety of options. This one is just looking at, pedestrians, bicyclists, scooters in this case. Let's see. Of course, my favorite is going to be the AI version. So something that's mounted on a pole, looking down, and just kind of tracking, are these pedestrians, are these bicyclists, what's the flow, what's the direction? So really getting that in-depth look. Are there vehicles? And then off to the right, let's see, I don't know if we can really see that too well. There's a couple different counters as well too. So just different displays. Oh, here it is. So this is an indoor counter on the left. And then an actual display counter, there are a variety of options. But this is kind of one that would stand up, for instance, along a pathway. It would just give you then live updates as you walk by, it counts you and says how many people walked by that month or given a different time period, you know, or in total. So yeah, just wanted to bring that up and just see if there's any interest. We obviously don't need to make any decisions, but just, yeah, thought I'd want to, you know, see what folks' thoughts are. And then before we do that, though, maybe just pass it off to Zoe and see if she would want to share any of your thoughts on Smart's experience with the counters.
Sure, I can share a little bit. I was not around when Smart purchased we used the the urban post, the multi-counter. And so we have those cuts in the ground for the loop sensors and have the infrared that's picking up pedestrians. Our experience has been pretty positive. But we do have data collected on 15-minute intervals. I will say when something goes, when some numbers seem off, it's really valuable to have that data on hand to assess and sort of see what's going on and see if it was something environmental influencing the outcome. So we can correct it. We did have some issues with our sensors, but I think they resolved that in this kind of next generation of product. But overall, it's been very positive, but I think you do have to be mindful of the installation because environmental factors can impact your counts. Spiders, for example, can get in the sensors, and all of a sudden you have a lot of pedestrian counts at an odd hour in the day. And so you have to go and validate the data. I think we've been very proactive about monitoring the data and validating it. So that is just a little bit about our experience. We have had occasions where there's been some vandalism, and that can affect the quality of your data, whether it's a sticker that's been stuck over a sensor or you know, someone kind of stuffing sticks into the where the sensor registers pedestrians in the post. But we've resolved that with some signs, proving kind of awareness of what they are. So that's kind of the gist of our experience. But overall positive, and it's been very helpful to monitor the trends over time and be able to identify use, especially around big events. So that's it for me, but happy to answer any questions.
Great. Yeah, Zoe, I think you kind of were getting to one of my questions at the end, just understanding how do you use the data? How do you make it actionable in your decisions and in your planning or fundraising? You know.
So well, we certainly use the data as we pursue grant activities or grant opportunities, I should say. And I think over time, as we build out the pathway, we are going to install additional sensors. So it's going to help us really understand those traffic flows. But what's been really insightful for us is kind of understanding the user base. It's helped us even in terms of thinking about our wayfinding and travel needs of people using the pathway because people don't follow a typical commute pattern. People are using it. Our peak periods don't mirror kind of conventional commute periods. We have a lot of use, let's say, on the weekends of people kind of pursuing recreational trips. So that's really important to think about. Pathway connectivity, for example. So those are just some examples of what we do with the data in hand.
Great, thank you. Yeah, just open it up to any other questions or just thoughts, reflections.
And what's the cost of one of these devices, and does it need power, or can it be solar, or?
Yeah, so there, let's see, in terms of costs, we can take a look real quick. This was one of the multi wooden posts or the recycled posts. And so looking down, yeah, these, I'm not sure if they can be solar powered. These definitely have battery life. I know there's some that you can hardwire too. So this says 1.5 year battery life. So then there's usually a process to either you can replace the battery yourself. We ran into the problem where we were trying to get the batteries replaced on ours, but they are just too old. And so we just have to replace the whole unit. But in terms of costs then, they kind of vary by what their range is and then whether or not you want the directionality as well too. So for one that can have a range up to a little under 5 feet with no directionality, just say these are how many people passing, is about 3,800. To be able to have directionality is about 4,400, 4,500. That's, yeah, kind of for these wooden posts, for instance. For ones where, let's just say, just the bicycle path ones down here, you can kind of see these ones are running for how many loops that you want. I think these are these diamond shapes are kind of the actual loops. So depending on how many you want to be able to install. Am I not sharing my screen? I totally thought I was. Sorry. That's embarrassing. So yeah, let's see. That's about for the direction for those bike counter ones. Just for 2 loops is about 2,200. And then for about 8 loops is 3,700.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Given our earlier conversation about micromobility and e-bikes and other devices, it seems like maybe it could be valuable to have a counter that can measure speed, but are those substantially more expensive? So that you just gain a better understanding of conditions on the trail and user.
Yeah, they definitely are. Let's see. Now I can actually share my screen. Sorry about that before. So yeah, this was looking at just the bicycle by itself. The ones that were looking at the scooter use as well, I think those are called multi. That is this one. So yeah, they have, you can tell speed, the scooter counts, direction, but it also looks at pedestrians and bicyclists as well. So this one was the one going for, I was talking about the range, so around a little under 5 feet. It's about 4,500 for one of these posts.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other business comments, announcements? Okay, with that, we'll adjourn.